In this video, I'm going to be going over some of this Ecology 1 review key. Apologies, I do not have my Apple Pencil currently, not sure where it is, so I'm going to have to write using my finger here. So for the first two questions, this first standard is about the nutrient cycling. Why do living things need carbon? That comes back to the biomolecules, where all of the biomolecules require carbon to be produced. So carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins all contain carbon, so organisms need to take in carbon in order to produce those molecules. For the nitrogen, the proteins require nitrogen to be produced. So in order for an animal or a plant or whatever to produce their proteins, they need nitrogen. As a side note, DNA also requires nitrogen to be produced. Okay, nitrogen fixations. The basic idea with this is that nitrogen exists in the air in the form of N2 gas. However, living organisms are not able to access this N2 gas to get their nitrogen out of it. And so what has to happen is through either bacteria or sometimes lightning, this nitrogen is quote unquote fixed into forms of nitrogen that living organisms can use and can take in. And so this will happen with bacteria in the soil or bacteria in the water, and then plants will be able to take in that nitrogen through their roots from the soil. Animals will get their nitrogen by eating the plants or eating other animals that contain nitrogen. How does carbon get into the atmosphere? There are a lot of ways, including cellular respiration, so animals breathe carbon dioxide out. Usually with carbon in the atmosphere, we are talking about carbon dioxide. There is also the burning of fossil fuels, such as, this is the next question, things like oil, gas, or coal. There is the burning of trees and forests. So those are probably the biggest ways. There's also decomposition of like dead organic matter will release carbon into the air as well. How can carbon be taken out of the atmosphere? That is photosynthesis. So plants performing photosynthesis take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And then how do animals obtain their carbon? Again, we obtain our carbon through eating of plants that have done photosynthesis or eating of animals that ate the plants, etc. But it all kind of comes back to the plants. How do humans contribute to there being too much nitrogen in the water? The main issue with this is fertilizer. So we put fertilizer on the soil to give plants their nitrogen, and fertilizer contains nitrogen. That's like the main component of fertilizer. But if we put on too much fertilizer, which we often do when it rains, that fertilizer runs out of the soil, ends up in our lakes and rivers, eventually the ocean, where it can cause algae blooms, and that can be very bad for the things that are living there. Places carbon can be stored, sorry there's not space on this one, but we have the fossil fuels, our big stores of carbon. Plants, particularly trees, store carbon in themselves. Carbon can be absorbed into the ocean. Carbon dioxide absorbs into the ocean. It can also be in, we'll say, sediments, so kind of that like slime layer on the bottom of oceans has a lot of carbon in it. It can also be stored in rocks. There are carbon-containing rocks as well. So those are some places carbon can be stored. All right, standard 3.2, now looking at living things in the ecosystem and how energy flows through an ecosystem. Question number 1, 10% of the energy in one trophic level, so that's like one ecosystem level, the plants, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, etc. Only 10% transfers to the next trophic level when those are eaten. The energy that is lost is mostly lost as heat. So number 2, applying this 10% rule, if the producers contain 8,200 joules of energy, that means that the things that eat the producers, the primary consumers, will get 10% of that, so they will get 820 joules of energy, and then the secondary consumers that eat the primary consumers only get 10% of that, so they will get 82 joules of energy out of that original 8,200. When you are drawing a food web, the thing to be careful of is make sure the arrows are going from the thing that is being eaten to the thing that is eating it, because that's showing the direction the energy is flowing. So for example, here I have energy going from the grass to the rabbit that is eating the grass. Remember that producers, those are sort of the bottom level, those are the plants that are getting energy from the sun. Primary consumers are things that eat plants. Secondary consumers are things that eat plants, so things that eat meat. And then decomposers are things like worms or mushrooms that break down dead animals and plants. Do secondary consumers require producers? So do meat eaters require plants? So the meat eaters, they do not eat the plants, but they do eat the things that ate the plants. And so ultimately, yes, they do require producers in their ecosystem. If something happened to the plants, that would be bad not only for the plant eaters, but also for the meat eaters. Remember, sort of the base of our ecosystem is those producers that are getting their energy in from the sun. And then, yeah, that's answer number 5. Ultimate source of energy in most ecosystems is the sun. That's the input of energy. Which trophic level should contain the most biomass? That would be the producers. Our ecosystem can be kind of shaped like a pyramid where we have the meat eaters at the top, and there's the least of them, and the plants, the producers at the bottom, there ought to be the most of them, because that level is supporting all of the rest of the ecosystem. Difference between weather and climate. So weather, day to day, it's sunny, it's rainy, it's 50 degrees outside, whatever. Climate is yearly patterns and averages. Climate is more of a big picture overall thing that we're looking at. Biome is a place with a specific climate. Examples could include deserts or tropical rainforests. Ecosystems are one specific location within a biome, and so examples could include the Sahara Desert or the Congo rainforest. Characteristics shared by all living things. We have obtain and use energy, grow and develop, reproduce, homeostasis, made of cells, contains DNA, and responds to their environment. Those are the 7 things that all organisms, like requirements they must meet in order to be considered alive. And last standard is on photosynthesis and cellular respiration. So, things that go in for photosynthesis. What do plants need? Water, carbon dioxide are the reactants, the matter that goes in, and then the energy source is light, specifically the sun. Goal of photosynthesis is to make glucose. Waste product is the oxygen. Yes, we need oxygen, but for the process of photosynthesis, this is just something that is made incidentally at the same time as the glucose is being made. So the plant will just release that. Do plants perform cellular respiration? Yes. Plants do both cellular respiration and photosynthesis. Okay, molecule of ATP, simple diagram could just be like this. So we have the adenine section, and then we have 3, that's the key part, phosphates, because it's adenosine triphosphate, so 3. Purpose of ATP, that is all the energy for the cell. Cells need ATP to function. That is the only molecule they can use to directly get energy from. Inputs for cellular respiration, it's kind of the opposite of photosynthesis. So the glucose, sugar you get from eating, and the oxygen that you inhale, the waste products, carbon dioxide that you will exhale, and also water. The goal of cellular respiration is to take the energy from this glucose and use it to recharge our ATP battery to make that ATP for the cell. Why will you die if you stop breathing? So if we go through this sort of step by step, if you stop breathing, you get no oxygen. If you have no oxygen, you can't do cellular respiration. If you can't do cellular respiration, you can't make your ATP. If you have no ATP, your cells can't do anything. If you don't have ATP, your heart can't beat, your nerves can't send signals, your brain can't function. You will die pretty quickly within about 7 minutes. Why do animals need plants in order to survive? Well, plants produce all of the stuff we need for cellular respiration. Plants make the sugar, plants make the oxygen. So we require plants in order to give us those things that we need for cellular respiration. And then make sure you understand the plant growth puzzle assignment, the difference between energy and matter, where matter has mass and is made of atoms, where energy does not. So carbon dioxide, water, glucose, oxygen, these are all matter. Energy is not, and the energy is stored in the glucose as well as ATP. So remember that matter cannot turn into energy, and energy cannot turn into matter. Every atom still stays an atom and has to be accounted for.